إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Masjid for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it on the scale of good deeds on the Day of Judgment. And inshallah ta'ala, tonight's topic is going to be a very important topic. It's the topic that concerns all of us because the month of Ramadan is very close. And the month of Ramadan is just around the corner, as they say. And as always, for any action that you want to do in Islam, you need to have knowledge on how to do it. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَّهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنبِكَ. No, there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنبِكَ. Then ask for forgiveness. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala in his kitab Sahih al-Bukhari, he says, فَبَدَأَ بِالْعِلْمِ قَبْلِ الْقَوْلِ وَالْعَمَلِ. The Imam al-Bukhari, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, he started with knowledge first before actions and speech. فَعْلَمْ, know. And then he said, وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنبِكَ. Then ask for forgiveness. So as a general principle in Islam, for anything that you want to do as an act of worship, you need to learn how to do it first and then do it. So for example, you want to pray the salah. You learn how to pray the salah and then you pray the salah. You want to fast the month of Ramadan. You learn how to fast, what breaks your fasting, what doesn't break your fasting, and then you fast. You want to do a business transaction. You learn the rulings of halal and haram, and then you partake in the business transaction. So as a result of that, from the method of the scholars is when the month of Ramadan comes in, a mawsim of khair, they teach the people the rulings related to that month. So inshallah ta'ala, in today's lesson, we're going to go through some of the rulings pertaining to fasting. Before that, we're going to start with the importance of fasting. And I like my lectures, if you want to call them, interactive, inshallah ta'ala. So I'm going to be asking questions and I want you guys to interact. So the way that we're going to conduct this is questions and answers. The first question is, what is the importance of the month of Ramadan? Why should we concern ourselves with Ramadan? It's all around the corner. Why is it important? Why should we give it our time? Our hands.
Because it's the month when the Quran was revealed to the Prophet.
Allah. It's the month that the Quran was revealed. What else? Taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So you can get taqwa.
It's the holiest month in the year.
The holiest month. Is it the holiest month?
No. Yeah.
There's four, but it is one of the holiest months. It is the pillar of Islam. Jameel, very good. So many reasons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you who believe, fasting was prescribed upon you, just as it was prescribed upon those who are before you. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So you can gain taqwa. You can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions in the hadith of Ibn Umar, بُنْيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. That Islam was built upon five, and one of them is fasting the month of Ramadan. And we have other hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that show us the significance of Ramadan. One such hadith is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ from the hadith of Abu Hurairah in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ climbed on top of his minbar, the pulpit. And as you see the steps of this pulpit, the Prophet ﷺ's minbar pulpit had 3 steps. And he climbed upon the first one and he said, Ameen. Then he climbed upon the second one and he said, Ameen. He climbed on the third one, he said, Ameen. The Sahaba said, O Messenger of Allah, every time you took a step up, you said, Ameen. Why? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Jibreel ﷺ came to me. And he made dua. And the first dua was, رَغِمَ أَنْفُ الْمُرِيمِ. May the nose of the person be rubbed in dust. And this is an expression of the Arabs to show you that a person is going to be in great loss. And the first thing is what? That man أَدْرَكَ أَبَوَيْهِ. Whoever reaches his parents alive and it it's not a means for them to enter Jannah. That's number one. A person whose parents are alive, and it's a great blessing if your parents are still alive, they should be a means for you to enter Jannah. Your obedience and your respect and your honoring of your parents is an act of worship. So that's number one. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ said, the second dua, why I said Ameen, is رَغِمَ أَنْفُ امْرِئٍ أَدْرَكَ رَمَضَانَ. May the nose of the person be rubbed in dust, the one who reaches Ramadan. ثُمَّ انْسَلَخَ, and Ramadan leaves, وَلَمْ يُغْفَرْ لَهُ, and this person's sins is not forgiven. That's number two. Number three, may the nose of the person be rubbed in dust, the one who I mentioned in his presence, the Prophet ﷺ, and he does not say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Our point of evidence is the second part, which is what? Ramadan comes in and this person is not forgiven. So the aim of Ramadan should be your forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are forgiven. And your neck is freed from Jahannam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has utaqa, frees people every Ramadan from Jahannam, and gives them a position in Jannah. We should aim to be from those who are given this position. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions in a hadith narrated by the Muslim Imam Ahmed, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man sama Ramadan, or man sama yawman fi sabilillah." Whoever fasts one day for the sake of Allah, one day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ba'ad Allahu anhu, or ba'ad Allahu wajhahu 'ani an-nar 70 khalifa. Whoever fasts one day for the sake of Allah, Allah will distance his face from the hellfire 70 years. 70 years. And this hadith, it says, Man sama yawman fi sabilillah, one day for the sake of Allah. In Ramadan, how many days do we fast? 29, 30, almost a month. How much are you distance away from the hellfire? Calculate it. How many? 3,100 years, almost, roughly. This hadith, by the way, is regarding the voluntary fasting, fi sabilillah. And the scholars, some of them specify and they say this is for a mujahid who's fighting in the battlefield and is fasting. In any case, if this is the reward for a voluntary fasting, you can imagine the reward for a obligatory fasting like the month of Ramadan. And there are many, many, many other ahadith and ayat of the Quran that mention the virtue of fasting. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-Quran wa-siyam yashfa'ani lil-'abdi yawm al-qiyamah. The Quran and fasting is a means of intercession for the slave on the day of judgment. On the day when we all need help. On the day when we want to be saved from the hellfire. On the day that none of us has ever witnessed like that before. We want to be saved. How do we do that? Quran and Siyam, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. So that is the importance of fasting, number one. Number two is, what is fasting? What is fasting?
Is it when you don't have food for a period of time?
Good. So you can have drink?
Yeah, you have it in the morning.
So you can have drink.
No, you can't have drink.
So no food and no drink.
Yeah.
Good. What else?
Showing up taqwa to Allah.
MashaAllah. So what if I don't have any food and drink, but it's not an act of worship? I'm doing it to lose weight, just to get healthy. What they call intermittent fasting. Is it going to be? Niyyah, exact. Good. So the scholars, they give a definition for it. They say at-ta'abbudu lillah. The first part of the definition is it's an act of worship. So you're not doing it to lose weight. It's not for health reasons. It's an act of worship. That's number one. It's al-ta'abbudu lillahi bil-imsak, by withholding from food and drink and anything else that breaks your fasting. And we'll see there's a number of things that break your fasting that is not food and drink. So it's not just abstaining or withholding from food and drink. It's staying away from other things as well. From when to when? From Fajr till Maghrib. When the Fajr time kicks in until Maghrib, you don't eat or drink or do anything else that breaks your fasting. That is the meaning of fasting in our religion. In the Arabic word, siyam means mujarrad al-imsak, just to withhold from anything. For example, if I stopped myself from eating chocolates, in the Arabic language, the Arabs would call that siyam. If I withhold from drinking water for a period of 2 months, what is that called in the Arabic language? Siyam. So there is a relationship between the Arabic word and what we use it in our religion as well. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Maryam alayhi salam in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ يُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. O Maryam, if you meet the people, say to them, I have made an oath for Allah, فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا, that I have done siyam and I won't speak to anyone. So the fasting of Maryam alayhi salam was what? No talking. So how would she say to the people that I am fasting? Does everybody understand the question? Allah told Maryam alayhi salam, if you meet anyone from the human beings, then say to them, I have taken an oath with Allah, I'm not going to speak to anybody. If she's not speaking, how is she going to convey that information to the people? The Mufassirin, they say, through signs, ishara. Okay? The point is, the word siyam means al-imsak, to withhold from anything. In the Sharia, it means what? To withhold from food and drink and anything that breaks your fast from Fajr till Maghrib. That's the second question. The third question is, what are the pillars of fasting? What are the pillars of fasting? Everything has pillars, right? This masjid has pillars, walls. This table has pillars. We have pillars, our legs. What are the pillars of fasting?
Intention.
Intention. That's it? One pillar?
No, there's more.
What's the other one?
Taqwa.
Taqwa. So if you don't have taqwa, your fasting is not accepted?
No.
So you can't say it's a pillar. A pillar means if there's a pillar and I remove the pillar, what happens to the building? It collapses. So these two, you have to have them, otherwise your fasting is not accepted. Yes, the taqwa or lack of taqwa reduces the reward, but you started fasting is still valid. So what is intention? The second one? You guys are fasting on Ramadan, right? You have to know. Huh? Mutaba'a? Not necessarily. Huh? Tahara? You have to be in the state of wudu?
You have to be Muslim.
Muslim? You're right.
Abstaining from sin.
Good. Abstaining, not from sin, just abstaining from food and drink. Al-imsak. So a part of the pillars of fasting is not to eat and drink. If you eat and drink, is your fasting valid? No, so that breaks your fasting. So withholding from food and drink and anything that breaks your fast and intention, those are the two. Now let's speak about the first one. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are based on the intention. When the month of Ramadan comes, how do we do our intention? Is there a dua that you have to say? So how do you do your intention? How do you intend to fast?
Get up for suhoor.
Get up for suhoor. So I don't have to say anything. Do I have to make a dua? So the night before Ramadan, I sit in my room and I say, Oh Allah, I intend to fast the month of Ramadan. Do I have to say anything like that?
No, but when you set the alarm for suhoor, it's as if you are going to get up for fasting.
So you
it's
just
like an
have-
intention.
So just, what if somebody misses suhoor?
No, but they intended to.
Intended to get up. But if they didn't get up, so how did they intend?
With their heart.
Good, with the heart. So you're right. The fact that they had the thought of it, the intention is done. The issue of intention is as simple as thinking about it. And that's what some of the scholars, they say, مَنْ خَطَرَ عَلَى بَالِهِ فَقَدْ نَوَى. Whoever the thought comes to the mind that I want to fast, خلاص, you made the intention. Intention is not you have to sit in a room and think really hard. Or you sit on your chair and you think really hard until the veins on your forehead pop. No. You don't have to say anything. The place of intention is where? In the heart. If I say to a brother, can you bring me this water bottle? And he comes and brings it to me. Has he intended to do it? Yes. So intention is a very, very light matter. As long as you think about it, you've intended. Khalas. Now, second issue related to the intention. When do I have to intend? do I have to intend every single night of Ramadan, or one intention in the beginning of Ramadan suffices me for the whole month?
One intention at the beginning.
Is more than enough. Good. Anybody differs? Anybody believes, or anybody else believes you have to intend every single night? Huh? Every single night?
Malik.
Malik, it doesn't say every single night.
It's not every single night before.
That's again Malik speaking. Every single night. The scholars have a difference of opinion. Whether you have to have the intention every single night, because of the Prophet ﷺ saying, مَنْ لَمْ يُبَيِّتِ الصِّيَامَ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَلَا صِيَامَ لَهُ. Anybody who does not have the intention from the night, then there is no fasting from him. So a group of scholars, they said you have to have the intention every single night before Ramadan. In Ramadan, every single night, you have to intend. Another group of scholars, they said no. The Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are based on the intention. And if you intend the whole month, once in the beginning, it's enough. And I'm inclined to the opinion of Imam Malik, which he does that opinion, as with a bit of a variation, which is one intention in the beginning of the month will suffice, inshallah. The one intention in the beginning of the month is sufficient, as long as your fasting is not broken in the middle. Meaning, if on the 10th of Ramadan you fall ill, and you stop fasting for a period of time, to resume your fasting, you have to bring your intention again. Otherwise, one intention in the beginning is sufficient for the whole month, inshallah. Clear? Everybody understand? So that is the intention of fasting. Now, as a side benefit, the fasting that we're talking about is Ramadan. And you have to have intention generally the night before, or before Ramadan begins. Now, what's the thamara, what's the benefit of us choosing this opinion that one intention in the beginning of the month is sufficient? Hypothetically, if somebody misses suhoor, or misses the intention at one particular day, for example, on the 5th day of Ramadan, somebody has the iftar, eats the iftar, and goes to sleep, and does not wake up until the next day, 10 a.m. They missed Isha, they missed Tarawih, they missed Fajr, and they woke up the next day. So they never had the intention from the night before. If we say one intention in the beginning of the month is sufficient, alhamdulillah, his fasting was valid. But if we condition the intention every single night, on that opinion, that there is no fasting for that person. So the balanced opinion is what? One intention in the beginning is more than enough, as long as there's nothing that breaks it. For example, women, when they have their menses, if they have it in the middle, the fasting breaks. For them to start fasting again, they need to bring another intention. Otherwise, one intention in the beginning was sufficient. Clear? Now, this is different than the voluntary fasting. In Islam, we have the obligatory fasting and the voluntary fasting. Ramadan is a obligatory fasting. The making up of Ramadan is an obligatory fasting. If you take an oath by Allah, and you say, oh Allah, allow me to pass my exams, and if you allow me to pass my exams, I will fast 1 week in a row. That fasting becomes wajib upon you, obligatory fasting. Anything that is obligatory, you have to have the intention before. Anything that is a nafil, voluntary fasting, for example, somebody wants to fast Mondays and Thursdays, as a sunnah, voluntary. You don't have to, it's voluntary. If you want to do this, do you have to have the intention the night before? No. You can have the intention on the same day as well, not a problem. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would wake up, and it would be around the Dhuhr time, and he would come to his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha, and he would say, do we have any food? And then Aisha would say, there's no food today. And then he would say, Inni asbahtu sa'ima. That's it, I'm fasting. So when did the Prophet make his intention? In the middle of the day. And this is allowed for a voluntary fasting. So, if you wake up on a Monday and you want to fast Monday, and you wake up at Dhuhr time, or you woke up in the morning, you never had food, you never had drink, you never had anything that breaks your fasting. At Dhuhr time, you want to fast Monday. Can you do it? Yes, you can. How about 1 minute before Maghrib on a Monday? Can you do it?
Yes.
If you don't, eat or drink. Good. And that's the correct opinion. even if it's 1 minute before Maghrib, then your fasting is valid, as long as you intended it. The only difference of opinion the scholars have is regarding the reward you get. A group of scholars, they say you get the reward for the whole day. A group of scholars say no, you get the reward for that 1 minute that you actually fasted. Otherwise, they both agree that fasting is valid. And it's not a condition you have to have it before dhuhr, the intention. You can have it after, and there's not a problem, inshallah ta'ala. So that is the intention. Next issue. Who has to fast? The next question is, who is it obligatory for them to fast? So the kids in the masjid, Ramadan is coming. Is it obligatory for them to fast, the kids?
No.
No? Age of the kid. So what age does it become obligatory?
7 plus probably.
7. Obligatory. Allah.
12.
12.
Yeah.
I think maybe after you hit puberty.
So not 7, not 12. When you reach the age of puberty, then fasting is obligatory. Before that, if a person does fast, is it accepted? Yes, as long as they reach the age of tamyiz. Tamyiz is the age of distinction. So you have a child who's very young. Let's say a child is 1 year old. At 1 year old, the child has no conception of time, place, space, doesn't know what's going around him. If that child fasts, his fasting is not accepted. It's too young. When the child reaches an age where he can speak, he can respond, he can listen to instructions, they've reached the age of tamyiz, distinction. But they're not reached the age of puberty at that time. If they fast, their fasting is accepted. And the guardian who encourages them to fast gets the reward for it as well. But it's not wajib, it's not obligatory. It only becomes obligatory when they reach the age of puberty, whatever age that is. If that's 11, that's 11. If that's 15, that's 15. If that's 14, that's 14. As long as they reach the age of puberty, then it becomes obligatory for them to fast. In women, you have certain signs. From them is the menstrual cycle. They reach the age of puberty. In men, you have certain signs and ways that you know that a child has reached the age of puberty. From it is pubic hair, the croaking of the voice, having a wet dream. These are signs of the puberty in a male. In any case, when they reach the age of puberty, then it becomes obligatory. That's number 1. Number 2, is a non-Muslim obliged to fast? Yes? No. So we're not going to go around London and say all the non-Muslims you have to fast Ramadan, because it's only obligatory upon us, Muslims. That's number 2. Number 3, a person who is insane is not obliged to fast. So you have to have sanity, aql. A person who is insane, he does not know what's happening around them, it's not wajib for them to fast. If they did fast, would it be accepted? If an insane person did withhold from eating and drinking, would they be rewarded for it? Would it be accepted? Yes?
If he's insane, how can he make the intention?
Okay, so the scholars say no. Why? Because a person who is insane has no intention. We just mentioned one of the pillars is an-niyyah. And al-majnoon is faqid al-niyyah. He does not know what he's doing. So his fasting is not accepted. That's number 3. Number 4 is al-istitan, is being a resident. Meaning, if a person is traveling, it's not wajib for them to fast. If you're traveling, it's not obligatory for you to fast. Meaning, somebody who's traveling, let's say, for example, someone from here decides to go to Scotland, and they're traveling. Do they have to fast in Ramadan? No, it's not wajib. Now there's a question. It's not obligatory for them to fast, but is it better for them to fast, or is it better for them not to fast whilst traveling?
It's better to fast because if you fast, you don't have to do it on another day.
Good, so you've done it, you don't have to make up for it another time.
Yeah.
Good.
If there's no difference, then you should fast because you're preserving how sacred the month is. If it causes you a bit of hardship, the scholars mentioned you should break it. And if it causes you severe hardship, some of the scholars say it's actually wajib for you to break it.
Yeah, so it depends on the situation of the person. If the person says, for me, I'm traveling, and if I do fast, I'm going to find a lot of difficulty. Some of the scholars say it's actually haram for you to fast. You're not allowed to fast because you're going to cause yourself great difficulty and you're not allowed to do that in the Sharia. But if you say, for me, fasting and not fasting is the same, then we say it's better for you to fast for 3 reasons. Number 1, the sanctity of the month of Ramadan. It's better for you to fast in Ramadan than to fast outside because of the sanctity of the month. Number 2, as the brother mentioned, it's better for you to finish your fasting in Ramadan than having some missed fasting that you have to make up later. Because what tends to happen if you have missed fasting? People delay it and delay it and delay it and delay it. And almost the next Ramadan comes and you still haven't made up. It's أسرع في براءة الذمة. It's faster for your conscience. You've done it, خلاص. You don't need to have anything to make up. That's number 3. And number 4, it's also the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's known sometimes whilst traveling he would still fast. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam hadith in Abi Dawud where he said they were upon a traveling. وَمَا مِنَّا صَائِمٌ إِلَّا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم وَابْنَ رَوَاحَةَ. There is no one that was fasting except the Prophet and Abdullah ibn Rawaha. So the Prophet's action suggests sometimes the Prophet would also fast whilst traveling. So we say, if you have no issues fasting whilst traveling, fast, it's better. But if you think it's hard, then it's not a big issue for you. You can take the concession and not fast. But if you are a resident, you have to fast. But if you're a traveler, then it's not wajib for you to fast. The next one is ability, as-sihha or qudra, ability. So if somebody is sick, is it wajib for them to fast? No. And sickness is of types. There is 2 types of sickness. The scholars break it down into a marad yurja bur'uhu wa maradun la yurja bur'uhu. A sickness where it's expected you're going to get better. Somebody has a cold, somebody has a flu, and they expect it to get better. This kind of sickness, the scholars, they say, you just have to, you're allowed to not fast in Ramadan. All you have to do is make up for it another time. You just have to bring it back when you get better. So for example, somebody was sick in the 3rd day of Ramadan, 4th day of Ramadan, and 5th day of Ramadan. How much have they missed? 3 days. What do they have to do? They just have to bring it back after Ramadan. What does Allah say in the Quran? فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. Whoever is sick or traveling, you just have to make it up. Sometimes the sickness is an acute sickness. They say sickness that's not expected to get better. For example, somebody has diabetes, somebody has AIDS, somebody has a sickness that they have to take medication for it. They have to eat, they have to drink, otherwise they're going to get worse or even die. And this sickness is not known to get any better anytime soon. Certain people, they reach an old age where they don't have the ability to fast. They're very old. They have to have food. These kind of people, what do they have to do? For every day that they miss, they have to feed 1 poor person. So somebody who has diabetes, and the doctor says you have to have your medication, and it is during fasting hours, what do we say? Make it up another time? Why do we not say that? Because they're sick, they still can't make it up even outside Ramadan. So what do they have to do? Feed 1 poor person every day they miss. So if they miss all 30 days of Ramadan, how many poor people do they have to feed? 30. What do they feed them? What do you feed them?
Steak.
Huh?
Like a full meal.
What food? Fish and chips? Kebab? Burger? Biryani?
From their food.
Huh?
From their food.
Which food?
What they eat.
What they eat. That's good. So it is the norms of the people. Whatever the norms of the people is, you go back to it. So here, what's the norms of the people in the UK? What's the staple food? Fish and chips? Then we say it's fish and chips. Consensus, halas. So you feed them fish and chips for every day that you missed. And this is for a person who has a sickness and is not known to get any better from it. Okay? That is sickness. And the last one is for women. Now,
I have a question. So the person you feed, do they have to be Muslim too?
no, but it is recommended to feed a Muslim. It's better for you to feed a Muslim, but they don't have to be Muslim. The only condition is they have to be poor. or من الفقراء المساكين. That is not a condition you have to be a Muslim, but the scholars they say it's better for you to feed a Muslim than a non-Muslim. Yeah. But one poor person. Another question is, if you miss 30 days, are you able to feed 30 people all in one time? Or do you have to feed one poor person for every day and make it 30 days? You can do anything. Yeah, you can do anything. So you can either feed them, one poor person every day until you finish 30, or if you have bring 30 people together and you give them at one time, alhamdulillah. Okay? Jamil. Last condition of fasting is for the women. They have to be free from al-hayd wa nifas, from menstrual cycle or postnatal bleeding. A woman on her menstrual cycle is not allowed to fast. And it's not wajib for her to fast. So if she does fast, it's not accepted. And it's not even obligatory for her to fast. Okay? So those were the conditions of fasting. Let's summarize. What's the first condition?
Islam.
Niyya was not condition. Pillar. Islam. Number 2. Aql, baligh. Good. Intellect and puberty. Next.
مقيم.
Resident.
قدرة.
Ability.
عدم.
And the last one is free from hayd and nifas. Good. This is regarding the obligatory things. Now, the next issue is, how do we know the month of Ramadan has started? Sighting of the moon. Do you go sight it every day, every month you start? Before Ramadan? Who here sights the month of Ramadan, the moon? Nobody. So how do you know Ramadan is tomorrow? What do you say? TV. Good, mashallah. That is true. So, generally speaking, there are ways that we know Ramadan has entered. 2 ways. Number 1, the month before Ramadan is what? Sha'ban. In the Islamic month, the month has a maximum of either 29 or 30 days. Maximum. 29 or 30. On the 29th of Sha'ban, there's a possibility the month finishes on Sha'ban. And there's a possibility the next day is the 30th of Sha'ban. So on the 29th of Sha'ban, when it finishes and Maghrib time comes in, the people are going to go out to look for the moon. And if they find the moon for Ramadan, next day is Ramadan. Okay? By the way, there's a few things that are different from the Islamic month as opposed to the Gregorian month. The Islamic month is a maximum of how many days? 30. And minimum 29. In the Gregorian month, what do you have? 28, right? We don't have that in the Islamic month. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said, نَحْنُ أُمَّةٌ أُمِّي. We are an unlettered nation. لَا نَقْرَأُ وَلَا نَكْتُبُ. We don't read and write. الشهر هكذا وهكذا وهكذا. So the month is like this, and like this. Which is what? 10, 10, 10, what? 30. الشهر هكذا وهكذا وهكذا. The month is like this, and like this. What's that? 29. So an Islamic month can be 29 or 30. Good. The next thing is, an Islamic day is different than a non-Islamic day. An Islamic day starts at what time? Maghrib time. And when does it end? Fajr. A non-Islamic day, when does it start? Midnight. No. For us, when does the day start? Maghrib. So what comes first? Maghrib, night time comes first, and then the day comes. So that's why, as soon as we find out it's Ramadan, what do we start to pray at night? Tarawih, the night before. It's not the night before. It's actually the day of Ramadan. But it's the night time of Ramadan. Because the night comes before the day. In any case, the first way that we know Ramadan comes in is sighting of the moon. The second way is if Sha'ban completes 30 days, automatically the next day is the first of Ramadan. You don't need to look for the moon. Automatically the next one becomes the first. Jameel. The next thing that we're going to take is, and the next question is, what are the things that break your fasting?
Eating and drinking.
Eating and drinking. Eating anything, drinking anything?
Like saying bad stuff like swearing.
So swearing breaks your fast.
Yeah.
You sure? Does it break your fast or does it reduce the reward of your fasting?
Or it reduces the reward.
But your fasting is still valid. A good intent. Jima, sexual intercourse. What else?
Is it when you're fighting?
Fighting?
Yeah.
You want to fight?
No, I'm saying it's when you fight.
When you fight, no. It doesn't break your fasting. It's not good to fight. It reduces the reward of it, but your fasting is valid. But you shouldn't fight anyways. Vomiting. Any kind of vomiting? Purposely, good, intentional, inducing vomiting breaks your fasting. If you involuntarily throw up or vomit, it doesn't break your fast. Bleeding. A lot of bleeding, a little bit of bleeding, any kind of bleeding. What if somebody does a blood test, takes out some blood? Does it break your fasting? No? We'll come to it, inshallah. What else?
Intentional releasing of seminal fluid.
Intentional releasing of seminal fluid. Good. What else? Yeah? Good. A number of things, inshallah. Let's take it one by one. The first one is eating and drinking. In brackets, intentionally. If somebody eats and drinks unintentionally, does it break your fasting? No. And it happens a lot. Every Ramadan, the second day, third day, somebody opens the fridge and eats a yogurt pot or something happens, right? And then as they're eating it, what happens? Ramadan. Put it away, right? Does it break their fasting? No, it doesn't break your fasting. But if you realize it's Ramadan and then you carry on eating, does it break your fasting?
Yes.
Yes. So what kind of eating and drinking breaks it? Intentional. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever eats and drinks without realizing, فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. Allah has given the food. Question. If you see someone else eating and drinking in the month of Ramadan, yes, Allah is feeding and giving them drink. Should you stop them?
Yes.
Yes. Well, Allah's giving them food, right? And you're right, you shouldn't. You should stop them because the Prophet ﷺ said, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Whoever sees an evil, let him stop him. And evil is what? Anything that is incorrect in the religion. So you're not allowed to eat in Ramadan, and if you see somebody eating, you stop them. You say, you're fasting, right? You speak to them. And you remind them. So that's number one. Eating and drinking intentionally. Number two is al-jima'u fi nahari Ramadan. Is sexual intercourse in the morning time of Ramadan, regardless of whether seminal fluid is released or not. The act of sexual intercourse breaks your fasting in the morning time. Meaning, if somebody does it in the night time, does it break your fasting? No, because it's not, you don't have to fast at night. Only in the evening, in the morning time. That's number two. Number three is releasing seminal fluid, regardless of how it comes about. Whether it's by kissing or touching your spouse, whatever it may be, it will break your fasting. And there is one exception, which is a case where there is seminal fluid released, but it doesn't break your fasting. Good, yeah. Or somebody having a wet dream. Somebody has a wet dream and sleeps and releases seminal fluid, it doesn't break your fasting. That's number three. Number four. The scholars, they say, مَا كَانَ فِي مَعْنَى الْأَكْلِ وَالشُّرْبِ. Anything that takes the meaning of eating and drinking. Meaning, you're not eating and drinking, but it takes the same ruling. For example, somebody puts IV drips all day, all in the morning of Ramadan. They go to the doctor, they put IV drips. And they say, I'm not eating and drinking. Does it break the fasting? Yes. It does. Why? Because it's nutrition. Anything that takes the ruling of eating and drinking, even if it's not food. You give yourself injections, you give yourself IV drips, it will break your fasting. Okay? With the condition that it is nutrition. Nutrition. That's number three. Number four. Well, that's number four. Number five. And there is a khilaf regarding this, which is the issue of hijama and releasing blood from your body. Blood coming out of your body breaks your fasting. Wet cupping. And the scholars, they say, hijama. What is hijama? Does everybody know hijama? Yes, prophetic medicine, wet cupping, and releasing of blood. Does it break your fasting or does it not break your fasting? There is a difference of opinion. I'm inclined to the opinion that it does break your fasting. Based on the hadith of Rafi' ibn Khadij, where the Prophet ﷺ said, أَفْطَرَ الْحَاجِمُ وَالْمَحْجُومُ. The one who is doing the hijama, his fasting breaks. And the one who hijama is done on, his fasting breaks as well. So that actually breaks your fasting. Now here there is an issue. Hijama breaks the fasting of who? The one doing it, meaning the doctor or the patient? Or both? Both. That's what the hadith mentions. But does it really break both? Or just one? I mean, the patient, we understand, the blood is being released, but the blood is coming out of his body, he's going to be weak, he's not going to be able to fast. Why is the doctor, the one who's administrating the hijama, why is his fasting working?
You allow it to happen.
If I allow you to eat and drink, is my fasting in a break?
Or like you facilitated the evil.
Right. Facilitate, we could say it's sinful. Why does his fasting break?
The sector
Huh?
Suck
Suck the blood how? That's very good. So, the scholars say the reason why the Prophet mentioned this regarding al-hajim wal-mahjum, the one doing it and the one on whom the hijama is done, is at the time of the Prophet, the hijama was done how? By sucking with the mouth. Unlike today. How is it done today? Vacuum cups, right? You vacuum, you press it, and that's how it's sucked. So back in the day, it used to be done by the mouth. And therefore there was a chance of the blood entering the mouth. And that's why the Prophet said, أَفْطَرَ الْحَاجِبُ وَالْمَحْجُمُ. So we say today, if somebody is using the modern way of doing hijama, the new methods, does it break their fasting? The one who's doing it? No. But the one on whom it's being done? Yes. Okay? And this is an issue, there is a khilaf, and there is another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but this is the correct opinion, inshaAllah ta'ala. And there's a lot of rulings that take the same thing, like blood donation, like blood transfusion, and other issues. Question?
I was just going to ask if you have a blood test scheduled and they take a small amount of blood, is that
Good question. So, small amount of blood, no. So a blood test, no. A blood transfusion, which is a lot of blood, yes, because it weakens the body. So a small amount of blood, for example, some people have diabetes and they have to just do a prick, right? Does it break your fasting? No. A small test tube for a blood sample, no. Because it's small blood. It doesn't weaken your body from fasting. But if it's a bag of blood, 1 liter of blood, when they do a blood transfusion or blood donation, then yes, it does break your fasting. Okay? Nosebleed, yes or no? Does it break your fasting? What if it's a lot and weakens the person? Then yes. Okay? Okay.
Hijama nowadays is done differently, not through the mouth, but through
Sucking.
so with the
Then only the one who on who it's done, their fasting breaks. But the one who administers it, it doesn't break for him, regardless.
but his fasting will diminish because he's
No,
facilitating.
no. He's allowed to do it. It's a profession, it's not a problem. So that is the blood. The next one is inducing vomiting, as we mentioned. So forcefully inducing vomiting. So we don't vomit by yourself. So if somebody, for example, has a flu, has a fever, has a headache, and as a result they throw up without willing to do it, does it break their fasting? No. But if you induce it, you force it out of yourself. However that may be, you stick fingers in your mouth, you squeeze your stomach until you throw up, or you smell something that makes you intentionally, that makes you throw up, then that breaks your fasting. The next one is specifically for women is the menstrual blood. When the woman's menstrual blood comes out, the fasting is invalid and is broken. Or postnatal bleeding, when she gives childbirth, it breaks their fasting as well. And there's other issues as well, but this is the summary of things that break your fasting. Any questions?
What about, of course, the intention is not there for when we brush our teeth or do the mouthwash.
Yes.
You know, some mouthwash has alcohol, percentage of alcohol,
Yes.
but sometimes it go inside. So what is the condition for that?
So generally, brushing your teeth, does it break your fasting? No, unless you swallow something in your mouth and it goes into your stomach. But if you don't swallow anything, your fasting is valid. Mouthwash, again, if you make it in your mouth and you spit it out, it does not invalidate your fasting. Now, the issue of alcohol mouthwash, should you even use it or not, is a discussion. Now, why do you use the ones that have alcohol? Why don't you use the ones that don't have alcohol?
Because with alcohol, it's give more, as per what they say, it's more clarity and the heat and all that.
Who said that?
What they say.
Right. That's what they
This
say.
one is written is more intense.
Ironically, I read a research a while ago which says that the alcohol actually causes more bacteria to come into your mouth. Because it kills bacteria and then more bacteria grows. As a result of it, you actually have more bacteria. So regardless, you should avoid using the one that has alcohol. You have the version that has non-alcohol as well. Inshallah. Now,
So something just come to my mind about pain patches. Any medication for a patch on the skin. Is there anything?
as long as it's a painkiller, like
painkiller or a medicine.
no, as long as it's not nutritious, it will not invalidate.
It's not entering the stomach. It's going
No,
through
it's
the
fine.
transdermal
It goes. Does it go to the?
through the skin.
Does it go to the veins?
Well, everything ultimately will end up in the blood vessel. How else does it get absorbed?
Good. And is there any nutrition in it, or is it just a medicine?
No, it would just be the medicine.
Yeah, that's fine. If there's nutrition, then that's what breaks it. It's like the vaccine in COVID times, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole discussion: does something break your fasting or not? It depends. If there's nutrition, no.
Oh yeah.
But if not, it doesn't. If it's just a vaccine, then it doesn't. No. And I'm not honest now.
Does chewing gum break your fast?
Good question, mashallah. So the scholars, they break chewing gum into different parts. There's gum that we eat today, which is extra. What other brands do you have? Wrigley's. These kind of gums, they not only have flavor and other things, and they have a form of nutrition in them. So yes, it does break your fast. There is a sugar and other things. That's why if you look at the back, you have calories and ingredients and other things. But if you have a kind of gum which is called mastic gum, Arabs would know it as Roban, Somalis would know it as Roban. It's mastic gum, it's natural gum, it has no flavor. And it's gum that if you chew it, it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't separate, it doesn't break apart. That is allowed. But I don't think anybody in this country ever actually uses that kind of thing. But to answer your question, yes, the gum will break your fasting. The gum that you have today, it will break your fasting. It will still break your fasting because you can remove the flavor, but you can still have things when you eat it or if you bite onto it, it comes into your stomach. You can have it after you open your fasting. Clear? Okay. Next issue. There are certain things that are recommended in fasting. Now everyone's going to fast inshallah ta'ala and who is obligatory. But what you want from Ramadan is you want to get the upper edge. You want to have the extra reward. You want to make the best out of your Ramadan. So how do you make the best out of your Ramadan? You do the mustahabbat, the recommended acts. Here's a list of recommended acts. Number 1, as-suhoor. The action of eating the pre-dawn meal. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, تَسَحَّرُوا فَإِنَّ فِي السَّحُورِ بَرَكَةً. Have suhoor, in it is blessing. So having that meal before Fajr, in it is blessing. You get rewarded for following the Sunnah. You give you energy more throughout the day. There's something that is a Sunnah, that's something that you should do. That's number 1. Number 2 is ta'khir suhoor, is delaying the suhoor. So one thing is having the suhoor is a Sunnah. The second Sunnah is delaying it as close as possible to Fajr. The closer to Fajr, the better. And that is the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ once had his suhoor, and then he got up to pray the Salah of Fajr. And the companion narrated it. And the companion was asked, what was the time difference between the Prophet having his meal and standing up for Fajr? He said, نَحْوَ 50 آيَةً, amount of 50 ayat. So not wrong. The recitation that allows you to recite 50 ayat in a moderate pace. So, a small amount of time. So the closer to Fajr, the better. Now if you eat your suhoor early, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., maybe midnight, is it okay? It's okay, it's accepted. But it is barakah, but it's closer to the sunnah is better. As long as you have it, it's good. But the closer to the Fajr, the better it is, and the more barakah it has, inshallah. So that is number 2. Number 3 is ta'jeel al-fitr, is hastening to opening your iftar. Some people, they say, look, Maghrib time comes in and they don't want to open their iftar. Akhi, why? Hey, I'm strong, inshallah, I can hold. I can wait till the Taraweeh. You see, what do we say? Huh? No. Whether you're strong or not, the sunnah is as soon as the time for Maghrib comes in, have the date ready and open it. That is the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَا زَالُ النَّاسُ بِخَيْرٍ. The people remain in good, مَا عَجَّلُوا الْفِطْرَ, as long as they hasten to iftar. So you open up as soon as possible. That is number 3. Number 4, the sunnah of opening your fast is to open it with what? Dates. Fresh dates. Hold on. Fresh dates. If you don't have fresh dates, dry dates. If you don't have dry dates, water. Jura'at min al-ma', gulps of water. If you don't have water, anything. Whether it's sweet or salty, anything else. The hadith doesn't mention anything sweet, but some scholars they take a qiyas, analogy from the dates, and they say it's better to be sweet, but anything will open your fast. What if you don't have food?
Intention.
What if you don't have food?
Make the intention to break.
You don't swallow your saliva. Swallowing your saliva will not break your fast, regardless. So if you're in a position where the time has come in, you don't have any food in front of you, how do you open your fast? Simply by intending. By your niyyah. You can intend and khalas. And I mentioned this last week in a lesson, which is a few years ago I was giving a lesson and I was mentioning this point. If you don't have dates, then you go to water, and if you don't have water, then anything else. And if you don't have anything, then you don't swallow your saliva, but you intend. And I was saying, in a context of, so if you're in a shower and you're taking a shower and you can't leave and you can hear the Maghrib adhan, what are you going to do? And the water is finished and you don't have the water, what do you do? And my brother said, I'm going to take the soap bar and I'm going to take a bite. But anything will break your fast. Anything will break your fast, inshallah. Okay? And if you don't have food, what do you do? Intend. Don't eat the soap bar, inshallah. It's not good for your health. So that's number 4. Number 5 is from the sunnah of fasting, opening your fast, is the dua. What is the dua? Huh? When you open your fast. Good. So there's 2 dua. That's the dua that is authentic. So there's another dua. Who knows it? Well, you mentioned earlier. Allahumma lakal that one is weak. The dua is weak. So the dua that is authentic is ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. That's the sunnah dua, and that is the authentic dua that you make. Now, when do you make that dua? Before eating?
No.
After eating? Whilst eating? After.
Whilst eating. These two get the same.
So before eating, what do you say? Bismillah. Then you take the date and you eat it. When do you say it?
After you finish.
After I finish my whole meal?
After you finish.
So technically you're both right. It's whilst eating the date, or whilst you've taken a bite from the date, then you say it. Why? Because the dua mentions what? ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق. That the thirst has gone and the veins have moisture. Which means that you make the dua after eating, because that's when it happens. Okay? So that's the sunnah dua that you make. The next sunnah is al-ikthar min as-sadaqah, is increasing in charity. If there's an opportunity for you to give sadaqah in the month of Ramadan, take full advantage of it, as opposed to outside of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ was mentioned, كان أجود الناس, he was the most generous of people. وكان أجود ما يكون, he was more generous in Ramadan, excessively generous in Ramadan. And the way to describe the Prophet's generosity was, as the Sahabas mentioned, كالريح المرسلة. He's like a free-flowing wind. Any opportunity he came, he gave sadaqah. So increasing in sadaqah in the month of Ramadan. The next sunnah that you can do is al-ijtihad fi salat al-layl, is striving in the night prayer. Taraweeh. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man qama ma'a al-imam hatta yansarif." Anybody who prays the Taraweeh, the night prayer with the Imam, until the Imam leaves, it's like he's praying for the whole night. So if you pray with the Imam until the Imam finishes, if it's 2 Imams, means until both Imam finish. You go back home, it's like you're still praying in the masjid, same reward, for the whole month, until Fajr. So there's a lot of rewards. So make sure you strive to pray as much as possible. Yes, it's not wajib. It's not wajib for you to pray, but it's highly, highly recommended. That is number 7. Number 8, Chan.
So when you say Tarawih, does that include the witr prayers, or you can?
All of it today.
So you should pray the witr also with the.
If you want to pray more, there's 2 ways to do it. So let's say you pray Tarawih with the Imam and then you want to pray more when you go back home. There's 2 ways. Either you finish Tarawih with the Imam and then you go back home and you pray, and it's no problem. Yes, the Prophet said, and it's from the hadith of Abu Hurairah, that the last prayer of the night should be witr. But it's not wajib. Meaning if you do pray something after witr, it's accepted. So you can finish with the Imam, the witr, and then go back home and pray more, no problem. Another way to do this is when the Imam is doing the one witr, and he says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you can get up and you can make it 2, and then you can pray your witr later on at home, no problem. Anyone is okay. Okay? The next one is the recitation of the Quran, Qira'at al-Quran. Recite as much Quran as you can in the month of Ramadan. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. This is the month that the Quran came down upon, or it came down on it. So read as much as Quran as you can. And the Prophet ﷺ said, for every letter that you read of the Quran, you have how many rewards? 10 rewards. ولا أقول لكم ألف لام حرف ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف. Alif by itself is one letter, 10 rewards. Lam is 10. Mim is 10. So you can imagine the millions of reward you have in reciting the Quran. And a lot of the Salaf, the way that they used to recite the Quran in Ramadan was something that you would not even imagine. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala would finish the Quran 60 times in Ramadan. That's twice a day. Twice a day he would finish the Quran. And it's not far-fetched. One of my teachers, he finishes the Quran every day in Ramadan. One time every single day in Ramadan. So the whole Ramadan, 30 times. So you have to strive as much as you can to read. And a question that arises is, should I focus when I read more on the meaning and reflection, or more on the amount? More on the amount. And the evidence for this is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Jibreel alayhi salam, he would revise the Quran with the Prophet every single year. And in Ramadan, he would revise it twice. He would revise it twice. Some scholars, they say this was even before he died, he would revise it twice, every year in Ramadan. Now, and some scholars say no, he would revise it twice only in the year he died. In Ramadan, يدارس القرآن, he would revise it with the Prophet. Meaning he would constantly revise it. In any case, reciting Quran is very important. Number 9, al-i'timar. If you have an opportunity to do Umrah, to go to Mecca and do Umrah in Ramadan, take it. It's the reward of Hajj. So go for it, inshallah. Number 10, if somebody mocks you, insults you, makes you angry, and you're fasting, what should you do?
Say to them, I'm fasting.
Don't punch him. Don't punch him. Once I asked this question, he said, I punch him. What do you say? What do you say? I'm fasting in English or in Arabic?
In English, or whatever languages they speak.
Doesn't have to be in Arabic. The hadith says it in Arabic, right?
How are they going to understand Arabic?
Huh?
How are they going to understand Arabic?
What's the point of it? So should you say it out loud or should you say it to yourself?
To them.
So you're saying it to them. So who do you say it to? So when somebody makes you angry, the Prophet said if somebody makes you angry or insults you whilst you're fasting, you should say, Inni sa'im, or Allahumma inni sa'im. I'm fasting. Is this something that you're saying to yourself as a reminder to yourself, or to the next person, or to both? To yourself? The scholars, they say, in Ramadan, you should say it out loud, because it's a reminder for yourself and for the other person. Outside of Ramadan, if you're fasting Mondays and Thursdays, and somebody does mock you, then you say it to yourself, you don't say it out loud. Why? Because you don't want to tell the other person and show off that you're fasting, because it's outside of Ramadan. So you do say it to the other person, and yes, you can say it in English, you can say it in Arabic, no problem, inshallah. Okay? It's a reminder for yourself and the other person that I am fasting, and hey, you're fasting too, it's Ramadan. Okay? The next one is Tahari Laylatul Qadr, is seeking Laylatul Qadr, striving for Laylatul Qadr. What is Laylatul Qadr?
Like the night of the decree. So it's basically where if you pray on that night, then you get the same amount of rewards of praying as a day, like 4,000 miles.
MashaAllah. So when is it? You haven't answered my question.
It's somewhere in the last 10 days, but the Prophet couldn't remember it because when he was going to tell, he saw two people fighting, and then and then afterwards he forgot, but he could only remember that it was in the last 10 days.
MashaAllah. Very good. So we don't really, the short answer is we don't know where it is. Is it on the 27th? Allahu A'lam. Is it on the 21st? Allahu A'lam. So more likely it's in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Which of the 10 nights? Allahu A'lam. More likely. And from the 10 nights is likely to be on the odd nights. So 21, 23, 25, 27, 29. And yes, there are certain opinions that mention the 27th, but that's not always the case. And the correct opinion is that certain years, or 1 year, this year, in 2024, it can be 27. The following year, it can go to 21. It's not always the same night, but the reward is great. And Allah says what? إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ خَيْرٌ مِنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. It's better than 1,000 months. One ibadah you do in this night, and if Allah gives you the opportunity to do it, it's better than 1,000 months. How much is 1,000 months in a year? 83 years. And a lot of us don't even have that life. So 83 years. We don't even know if we're going to die if we walk out of this masjid. We don't know when we're going to die. So if you get the opportunity and Allah gives you the ability to reach Laylatul Qadr, strive. And try your best to work hard in all of the 10 nights. Don't just expect it to be on one night. Work hard throughout all of it. Okay? Inshallah. And perhaps the wisdom of the scholars, they say, why we don't know when this night is for you to work hard every single night. So you don't just rely on one night. Now, the next one is al-i'tikaf, is to do al-i'tikaf, to seclude yourself away from the people and focus in worship in the masjid. And i'tikaf has different rulings. If there's any questions, we'll take them. But i'tikaf is when you seclude yourself in the masjid and you focus on your ibadah, on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you don't leave. And you don't have to do i'tikaf a certain amount of nights. You can do it for one night if you wanted to. You can do it for 2, you can do it for 3, as long as you intend what you want to do, inshallah ta'ala. These are the recommended acts of Ramadan. A few more things, inshallah, we'll quickly mention, and then we'll open for any questions and answers. The next thing is anything that is disliked whilst fasting. What is disliked when fasting? So these are things that what? We took the things that break the fasting, things that are recommended in fasting. What are the things that are disliked?
Swearing.
Is it disliked or haram?
Wouldn't haram mean it breaks your fast?
No, haram means it's impermissible, you're sinful, but not necessarily breaks your fast. Fighting, same thing. Is it haram or is it disliked? It's haram.
Somebody mentioned miswak before zawal midday.
That's a stronger opinion, no. The miswak is a sunnah, mutlaqa, unrestricted all the time. But it's something close to that.
Listening to like listening to bad music or like seeing bad stuff.
Good. It is disliked or is it haram? Haram, right? It's not allowed to be sinful.
Idle speech.
Again, idle speech is haram or
Disliked.
dislike is two things. Number one is al-mubalaghatu fil istinshaqi wal madmada, is to go overboard in rinsing your mouth and gargling your mouth and rinsing your nose. So when you make wudu, what do? Put water in your mouth and rinse your nose. Generally, you want to do as much as possible. بالغ. The Prophet said, do it as much as possible. إلا أن تكون صائما, except if you're fasting. So in fasting, the scholars they say it's disliked to go overboard. So when you wash your mouth or when you rinse your nose in wudu, you don't go overboard. Going overboard is not haram, it's disliked. The second thing that is disliked is tasting food لغير حاجة. Tasting food when there is no need. Meaning, somebody's cooking food and you want to taste it. And there's no need for you to taste it. And by tasting it, you put it in your mouth, you get the taste and you spit it out. You're not eating it. It's disliked. If you're the one that there's no need for. For example, somebody's house, they're cooking food. The mother is cooking the food. Whose need is it to taste the food? The mother, the cook, who knows how to cook and likes the food and knows the taste, whether there's a lot of salt or a little salt. The mother knows, right? If there's a child who's walking and he's reached the age of puberty and he wants to taste it, is it haram? No, it's disliked because that child has no hand. It's not a need for that child. The need is therefore the mother. So that other person tasting it, or the husband trying to taste it, when it suffices for the wife to taste it, is not haram but disliked. Yeah.
Let's say your mom wants someone else living in. Wait,
Good
what's
question.
the
If she tastes it and she doesn't think she doesn't know, then she's allowed to allow somebody else, no problem. But you don't go for it by yourself. Yeah? And generally men don't really know much about cooking, right? Or is it a stereotype? Generally the women, they don't taste better than men, I think. Yeah. So that is the makruhat. The next thing is the mubahat, things that are permissible. From it is bal'u rizq, is swallowing your saliva, completely permissible. Even if I gather a big ball of saliva in my mouth and swallow it, yes. As long as it's within the mouth, it's okay. If it comes out and then you swallow it, then no. Okay? As much as you swallow in your mouth, your fasting is valid. The next one is tasting food with a need. Like I mentioned, the mother should allow to taste the food if there is a need. And what's the need? Just to know the taste. She's allowed to put it on her tongue, taste it, and spit it out. Okay? That's number 2. Number 3 is al-ihtisal. You're allowed to take a shower whilst you're fasting. As long as you don't drink the water. You're allowed to take a ghusl and shower, no problem, it's completely fine. Also, miswak, using the toothpaste or toothbrush is completely allowed, not a problem, as long as you don't swallow. Also, at-tatayyub, putting perfume, is it allowed?
Yes.
Completely allowed, not a problem. Also, what is allowed is at-tabarrud, is washing your face, especially in hot countries. When it gets very hot, you're allowed to take water and pour it on your face to cool yourself down. It's completely allowed and not a problem. Okay? Even here, if you wanted to, take water and gargle, it's completely fine. Just cool yourself down, it's not a problem, inshallah. The next things are the things that are haram in fasting, and that's the last one, inshallah. Number 1 is, the thing that is haram in fasting is kissing, touching your spouse when you cannot control yourself. That's haram. So for somebody to touch and kiss your spouse, is it allowed in Ramadan? Unrestrictedly? All the time? For you, no problem. For young kids, it won't be a problem.
The hadith where an old man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he made it permissible, but a young child came to him and he said no because of what it leads to.
So it happened in the life of the Prophet. A man came to the Prophet and he asked him the same question, am I allowed to kiss my wife whilst I am fasting? The Prophet said no. The next person he said yes. So then the companion said, why did you say yes to one and no to the other? He said, the one who I said no to was young and he couldn't control his desires. I know that from him. But the one that was old, I said yes because I know he can control his desires. So as long as you can control your desires, it's not a problem. But if you cannot and you know it will lead to something else, then it's haram for you to engage in that, inshallah. The next one is qawlu zur, is vain speech, idle speech. That's what you guys mentioned. All of that is haram. Vain speech, swearing, backbiting, all of these things are haram generally. Backbiting, lying, mocking people, it's haram anyways. It's more haram in Ramadan. You stay away from all of that. Also, another thing that the scholars they say it's haram is al-misal, which is to fast 2 days in a row. So I fast from Maghrib till Fajr, right? Some people don't open, from Fajr till Maghrib. Some people don't open their fasting in Maghrib. They continue fasting until the next day. So they carry on fasting 2 days, 3 days in a row. Is it allowed or not? It's haram. And that's the strongest opinion. And then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam naha anil misal. The Prophet prohibited from doing misal. So you can only fast one day, you have to break it with iftar and then start a new day.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to fast 2 days in a row.
And that's unique for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we say. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّمَا أَبِيتُ عِنْدَ رَبِّي, and I go to I'm with my Lord, and my Lord feeds me. He gives me the ability to carry on. But that's unique for the Prophet. He had the strength. It's not allowed for us to do it. Now that without bring it, there is a difference of opinion. Some of the scholars say you're allowed to, because he allowed the Sahabas to do it, but the strongest opinion is it's not allowed. And that was unique for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here for now. This will suffice. If anybody has any questions, anything you didn't understand, anything you want me to repeat, feel free to ask, inshallah.
Question about the, as we said, like it's the amount was important on freedom Quran during the Ramadan. So we will see our time during the day, etc.
The amount of sorry?
The amount of Quran that we recite. One time is the time of Taraweeh. What's better? Like, is it during this time, reciting yourself at home with your family?
As much as you can. So when the Imam, there is a reward for you to pray Qiyamul Layl, which is good, but that's not you reciting. You have to recite it yourself as well. That's recommended to recite it yourself. So you try to also have your own time where you recite Quran by yourself outside the Taraweeh and night prayer. So that would be the best, inshallah. As much as you can. Again, not all of us have time. A lot of people work. Whatever time you have, the best that you can.
The question is, some people prefer to do Taraweeh at home rather than the mosque, to recite more.
You balance whatever you see is best. Again, with these kind of issues, the scholars they say, "Ma kana anfa'a li qalbik." What is better for your heart? Some people, for them, and what's better for their heart is Qiyamul Layl with the Imam. That softens their heart, that brings them closer to Allah. And then some people say, no, for me, it's reading Quran at home that brings me more. Again, the one thing that you will not have to do, or you cannot do outside Ramadan is Qiyamul Layl Taraweeh. And that is a ibadah that is specific to Ramadan. You should get the best of it. After that, yes, you can read Quran as much as you can, and you can read Quran outside Ramadan. But that chance of praying the night prayer is very rare to get it outside Ramadan. You should get advantage of it. But how do you balance between the two is whatever is better for you. And again, it's always about balance. Sometimes a person will go through a phase where they will pray to hand the Imam, and then some certain days by themselves read the Quran and prefer not to go to the Taraweeh. You say what's better for you and for your heart. There's no rule. It's just whatever is most beneficial for you.
Sisters, if they feel better praying Tarawih in the masjid, is that okay?
No problem. You're fully allowed to go to the masjid and pray, no problem. Whatever works. They'll get the same reward as the man. For praying Tarawih.
Question about Atikaf. If a bit, we said like one day, can I have niyyah one day, spend the night, and then can I have the niyyah for the 10 days, for example, but spend the night, go out to put the kids in bed, come back, this kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's a good question, mashallah. So the scholars, they say, i'tikaf, the whole purpose of it is to seclude yourself away from everyday job and work and everyday duties. So it is to really give your time to worship Allah in the masjid. And from the conditions of i'tikaf is if you leave the masjid, it breaks your i'tikaf. And the scholars have a discussion of what things can I do if I leave the masjid, it will break your i'tikaf. For example, if I leave the masjid with the purpose of making wudu, meaning this is a masjid, let's say for example, and I have to leave the masjid and the wudu area is outside, will it break my i'tikaf? No. because that is ibadah, that is something that is an act of worship. But for example, other ibadat, for example, the scholars speak about, for example, talab al-ilm. Let's say there is a gathering of knowledge in Birmingham. Some of the scholars came in Birmingham in Ramadan, and you're doing i'tikaf. Are you allowed to leave your masjid and go to attend the lessons and come back? Or for example, janazah. Somebody dies. You want to attend the janazah. You want to visit somebody that is sick. Are you allowed to leave the masjid whilst you're in i'tikaf? No, it will break your i'tikaf. And even anything else, for example, work, putting the kids to sleep, it breaks your i'tikaf. So the best thing to do is, in that case, is to dedicate one day, whatever you can, and then do i'tikaf. And then when you finish that, then to make a new intention to do another day, whatever you can. Because remember, if you break the i'tikaf, you get no reward. Somebody intends 10 days, and in the middle they break it, they don't get the reward for any of the i'tikaf. So you intend what you can. The best thing is to intend the minimum you can, and if you're able to do more, alhamdulillah. But don't intend a lot and then you can't do all of it. But yes, leaving the masjid for anything for the dunya, it breaks your i'tikaf. There is one situation where the scholars do say, they say you're allowed to do ishtirak al-ibadah. Meaning before you start your i'tikaf, you can intend, if there's an act of worship that comes up, like a janazah or a sitting of knowledge, and then I want to go and do it. And some of the scholars said that's allowed. But not for anything in the worldly matters like work and life and family, no. That breaks your i'tikaf.
Duration-wise, you said you choose one day. What's the time? So if you, as for example, you do like the calf one day, when do you decide it starts and finishes?
That's a good question. So the scholars will speak about what's the minimum of i'tikaf. Can i'tikaf be 10 minutes?
Yes.
Yes. There's a difference of opinion. Some scholars say i'tikaf can be 10 minutes. So like you guys came here to attend this lesson, it could have been i'tikaf. And by the way, i'tikaf is not unique for Ramadan. You can do i'tikaf outside Ramadan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam كان يعتكف في شوال. He would do it in Shawwal, which is not Ramadan. You don't even have to be fasting to do i'tikaf. So what's the minimum of i'tikaf? Some of the scholars, they say, well, even if it's a moment. But that's not a strong opinion. The strongest opinion is one night or one day. So it's a day or a night, so a period of the time. So for example, when the sun is out, the whole time the sun is out, that's sufficient as minimum. Or the night time.
So from Maghrib to Fajr?
Maghrib to Fajr. Or Fajr to Maghrib. That's the minimum. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
No more questions? Am I free to go?
If they re-enter the masjid and if they remake the intention, that should count, shouldn't they?
So if they left the masjid, so if they go, how much did they intend in the beginning?
Like they intend to do 1 hour, they gone somewhere at wherever, region, came back, and sometimes it's by your hand.
Yeah. So again, if we say, based on the opinion, 1 hour is sufficient, or the minimum is allowed. The correct opinion is not allowed. The hadith of Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab, he said to the Prophet, I intended to do i'tikaf when I was in Jahiliyyah. I intended to do i'tikaf in Mecca. What should I do? The Prophet said, Awfi bi nadrik, do it, fulfill it. And the hadith or the wording of Umar mentions laylatan, and another narration mentions yawman, day or night. So the scholars, they say the bare minimum, we know that the Prophet affirmed you're allowed to do i'tikaf is either one night or one day. So 10 minutes, 1 hour is not i'tikaf. That's the correct opinion. But if you, for example, say, I'm going to do it in one day, let's say from this, let's say the 25th of Ramadan, I want to do it from Maghrib to Fajr, class. You can do that, and no problem. And you can leave, and then you can intend another day, no problem. Does that make sense? But otherwise, you can just come in and go and come in and go. It's not really the.
But nobody's gonna obviously do that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about an extreme situation.
Sorry?
I'm talking about the things is not in their hand.
Again, that's why you should minimum just do what you can, which is one day, class, one day. Don't intend more than that. Don't intend more than that. Again, if you're intending it and you have an intention, you'll get the reward anyways if you don't have the ability. Alhamdulillah, Allah is Rahim and Allah will give you the reward. But as an act of worship, the whole purpose of it is to do ibadah. And that's what the scholars say, if you leave the masjid, for other than the ibadah, it breaks, like going for anything else. You just want to go to the shop and roam around and do some shopping and come back.
Of course, nobody gonna do that.
Yeah.
But if they are making intention.
Yeah.
And some masjid you need to have a permission.
Yeah.
Is it a condition?
No. Again, you have to obviously look into the conditions of the masajid and stuff, and that's more from a safety perspective and logistical perspective from the masjid. But from an Islamic perspective, if you sneaked into the masjid and the masjid doesn't know, you'll be sinful because that's the principles, but you're careful about it. It's like those people who sneak into Hajj, right? So they don't get the license and they make their way to Hajj.
Exactly my point is there. Nusuk is not letting this here
Yeah.
to book it.
Yeah.
But this time people
You
will.
didn't hear it from me, but yes, if you go and you're able to do without it, your Umrah, your Hajj will be valid.
Practically, they
Can
don't
I
have such
suggest
laws. They just
conversation carried on after? I think a lot of people want to.
Yeah, leave it.
Could you carry on after?
No problem, inshallah. But yeah, the
Do
point is,
a one-to-one.
yeah, but inshallah, the point is, from an Islamic perspective, if all of the conditions are present, they'll be valid, but again, you'll be sinful for doing it. No more questions? Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here for now. Barakallahu feekum for your time. Jazakallahu khairan. Anything good that I said from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any mistakes, any shortcomings, any errors is within shaitan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم